Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks very much. Jen, are you able to get who those were?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. So the motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing or seeing none, I'll entertain then a vote on the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. That item passes unanimously. I'll move next to the meeting. I just want to thank everyone for their participation today. We have important issues of air quality that we'll be discussing today. So let's move now immediately to the committee reports. Jen, do you want to sort of organize that particular agenda item?
Sure, yes. The first one will be Emily Bull from MDE, who will be doing the committee report for the Technical Advisory Committee.
Yes, good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Yep, I can.
Okay. All right, excellent. So the TAC committee had its meeting on May 6th. We discussed current air quality monitoring in the area. Both ozone and fine particulates have been in the good to moderate range with no exceedances of the standard. We also discussed EPA's recent approval and finalization of the, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead there. We discussed the redesignation request and maintenance plan for the 2015 ozone NAC and the status of the inventories for the years 2017, 2022, 2032, and 2038, and then the next step forward. We also discussed EPA's finalization of the determination of attainment by the attainment date, the clean data determination, and the exceptional events waiver for the 2015 ozone NAC. EPA's finalization of the first two actions suspends our obligations for attainment SIPs, and then the granting of the exceptional events waiver drops the area's design value from 71 ppb to 70 ppb, which is attainment of the NAC. We also discussed the ALA, the American Lung Association's report. Their report just uses a different methodology to characterize ozone and fine particulates in the region. Last topic was the current day forecast protocol. This is a change to the 2025 forecast protocol, and an updated forecast would be issued the morning of if air quality is expected to be worse, that would be orange or higher, than the forecast from the previous day. And that's all I have.
Thanks very much. Any questions for Emily? Emily, thanks. That's a huge amount of work. Thanks for that report. Okay, not seeing any questions. Next item is the Air and Climate Public Advisory Committee.
All right.
Yeah. Yes, actually, Bill, I'll be doing that. Thank you,
Okay.
Chair Snyder. Leah Boggs here of COG staff. And just wanted to first say that the ACPAC leadership apologizes for not being able to attend these workday meetings. They do, both the chair and vice chair are working, but we do have a member of ACPAC who will be attending these meetings regularly on behalf of ACPAC. But obviously, I'm giving the update today. So the first thing I'll say is the Earth Day ACPAC launched its 12th annual Climate and Energy Leadership Awards. This year, we're giving away 5 projects, 5 awards, 2 in the government agency category, 1 for small jurisdiction, 1 for large jurisdictions. NGO is another category with 1 award, 1 in the businesses or for profits category, and 1 in educational. So that's 5. Application submissions closes on June 30th. So you can either contact me or reach out to Jen D. Simone for more information. Again, this is a project that the COG board as well as MWAC and CPC have been involved in quite some time, and we hope to get at least 25 applications this year. And so on to some more substantive comments. So since today, the focus is on data centers, many of my comments from ACPAC will center on data centers. So we have a report out from an ACPAC member who attended the Data Center Energy Forum in February, and I believe Chair Schneider attended that as well. Her comments were somewhat sobering, but I'll first start off with there seemed to be no interest from elected leaders to slow the growth in data centers due to the purported economic development benefits. She went on to say expected benefits come with a cost to communities. There was no discussion on air pollution impacts, and the inability for localities to meet climate goals and impacts on water infrastructure was not addressed. I will say that we had in March a data center forum on water, but at the time that was not discussed at the energy forum. And then she also went on to say that in Virginia, using behind the meter energy approaches to circumvent the 7-year wait list to connect the grid seems to be an issue. Also, most of the grid connected renewable energy sources are touted as a way to mitigate increases in electricity costs. However, renewable energy sources are unable to power data centers alone. And residential customers are seeing an increase in electricity costs due to transmission infrastructure upgrades, but data centers should pay for the marginal cost of additional electric grid infrastructure upgrades. And then finally, a couple more comments. On Monday's meeting, we did have a report out from our mid-course review. Our staff, our team member Maya Davis presented on the mid-course review, which is a review of the measures that we've been doing to reach the 2030 goal of 50% reduction. So it's a midway point. And so these comments were our takeaways from that. And we do have other staff that on the call for that. But data centers account for 11% of total greenhouse gas emissions as of 2023. Data centers, as a part of the building sector, are a high energy intensity industry with projected exponential growth in the region. They do could pose a challenge in meeting our 2030 goals. So that's an issue that we're looking at. And then also commercial electricity consumption from 2005 to 2024 increased by 59%. And again, that is data centers are included in that. But there are some areas that we are still having some progress in, but there are some challenges to that. And so we have Maya Davis who led that team, and then Jeff as well as Heidi is on the call. And finally, we had a presentation from Dr. Jeff Bronstein on his Parkinson's disease and air pollution research, which you all heard back in December 2025. And our next meeting is July 20th. That's all I have, Chair. Thank you.
Well, that was quite a report. Thank you very much for all the work that's being done there. Any questions at all on this report? Okay, not seeing any. Did anyone say anything? Oh, okay, the background. Clean Air Partners, Jen?
Yes, thank you so much. So Clean Air Partners kicked off their summer campaign the beginning of May during Air Quality Awareness Week, and that was with an announcement of their Lawn and Garden initiative. So that campaign will include a number of different events between Clean Air Partners and also their sponsors. And this will feature an exhibit that will educate the public about ways that they can reduce their emissions, specifically with lawn and gardening. We have a number of events. The first one's coming up this weekend, and that would be on May 23rd, which is Saturday. And that will be at the Waverly Ace Hardware Store up in Baltimore, and that will be with MDE. We have an event on May 24th at Frager's Hardware Store in the district, and that will be with DOEE. And then on May 30th, we have an event at the Fairfax Ace Hardware Store, and that is with Fairfax County Office of Environmental and Energy Coordination and also Virginia DEQ. The campaign is also going to include a lawn tool equipment exchange, and this is where residents can gas-powered mowers, leaf blowers, and also trimmers, and exchange them for new electric tools. This is something that we have been doing for the last 3 years now, and all of the gas-powered equipment that's brought in in exchange is then taken to our recycling partner to be disposed of. The exchange itself will take place on May 30th. It will take place at all of the stores that I mentioned above. In addition, there will be another store too that's participating, and that is the Old Town Ace Hardware store in Tacoma Park. Moving into the heat of the summer, which will be during the month of August, that's Ozone Action Month. During that month, there will be a campaign that's going to be all focused on eco-driving and how people can reduce their vehicle emissions. And then also during the summer, we will be partnering with Loudoun County, and we will be doing a number of events within the county itself. And we're still under planning for that. And that's all that I have.
Thanks, Jen. Any questions for Jen? Okay, the next report is the Climate, Energy, and Environment Policy Committee. Is Jeff King on?
This is Heidi Bonifant. Jeff is on, but I'll go ahead and give the
Hi,
updates today.
Heidi. Thank you for
Yes,
joining us.
sure thing. Yeah, piggybacking on Leah about the data centers, the next CPC meeting is May 27th, and we're going to have an overview of the General Assembly legislation related to data centers, both Maryland and Virginia, what bills were proposed and which ones passed. And as Leah mentioned, May 26th is the last COG, the third leg of the COG forums on data centers. That's going to concern land use and economics. And then the biggest item probably to share with you for CPC is the mid-course review report. This went before CPC, a draft of the report went before CPC in March, and we reviewed comments, and now we're going back to CPC May 27th to get their acceptance of the final report for presentation to the COG board at their July 22nd meeting. So bringing forward the mid-course review report as well as policy implications related to it. And in short, a short summary of the report is that we did hit our 2020 targets, but that we will have to accelerate actions in order to meet those 2030 goals. So, and then the last item related to the mid-course review is plans are underway to have a data dashboard on COG's website. So working on that now. And then just want to underline the climate awards that they're open through June 30th and hope COG receives a lot of good applications this year. So that is it for CPC.
Thanks a lot. Again, a lot of activity. Thanks a lot, Heidi. Any questions for Heidi? Okay, not seeing any. And again, Jen, if you see any, please interrupt. Next item on the agenda are local and state updates. Entertain any state air agencies. Jen, I'm not seeing any or hearing any. Are you?
I don't see any. How about we go through DC? Does DC have any updates?
DC, we published for proposal our NOx and VOC rack certifications for the moderate non-attainment requirements for the 2015 ozone NAAQS. That comment period ended. We got one comment that was just a technical update, so we'll be able to move forward with that. And I think we have anything else related to share with you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Maryland. Anything from Maryland air agencies?
Any updates to share at this time?
Okay, thank you. And Virginia.
Yeah, Mr. Snyder, one item of particular note that has an impact on MWAC and power plants in Virginia. We just completed a regulatory action to reinstate our CO2 budget trading program, which means we will be re-entering and rejoining and participating in RGGI starting on July 1.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions for the air agencies? Okay, again, not seeing any or hearing any. Local members, do local members have anything they want to share?
This is JD Spain from Arlington County. Nothing significant to report at this time.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have anything they want to share? Okay, not hearing or seeing any. And again, if you picking up something else, let me know. The next item on the agenda is the work program and budget. Jen, I turn it over to you, and that's agenda item number 4.
Great.
Jen?
Thanks so much. Okay, we're pulling up the slides here. So what I'm going to be presenting today is the FY 2027 work program and budget, and that covers the next fiscal year, which is July 1 of 2026 through June 30 of 2027. So this presentation is going to be high level on the tasks and the priorities within the work program. I'm also going to be going over the budget as well. So we'll take a look at the numbers. I hope everyone had a chance to review the actual documentation, the full document, which was posted on the meeting page. So we can move to the next slide. So priorities, we have a long list here. I'm just going to kind of hit a few of these. And the first one I really wanted to emphasize and mention and discuss is finalizing the redesignation request and maintenance plan. Specifically, this is for the 2015 ozone standard. This is something that we have been working on for the past, I believe, year and a half or so, and we are moving pretty quickly along to have the plan final and submitted to EPA by the end of this calendar year. So as we kind of go through what is in the work program and some of the specific tasks, you're going to see that this in particular really weaves through every of our core work program area, and this really is the biggest priority and the biggest focus for the upcoming fiscal year. In addition to that, some of the items that we traditionally do that we will obviously be continuing is tracking all of our data, making sure that we continue to meet the federal standards and reporting that back to MWAC. Working with our local members on any initiatives that they have or that is a priority to them in terms of helping improve the air. Of course, coordinating with our partners over in DTP and transportation, reviewing any analyses and assessments regarding transportation conformity. And then also another priority is communicating all of the good information, the good story that we have in terms of how our region has really significantly improved our air quality, and doing that and communicating that not just to our local leaders, but also to the public as well. And then another thing I wanted to mention is every 3 years, we do a formal air quality trends report that we will publish, and we are on track now to do another one of those reports this year. And that will be a formal report that we will be developing, and we will be publishing and also presenting to MWAC later within the fiscal year. Okay, next slide. We'll take a look at the numbers, so the funding contributions. So MWAC is funded a third from our local members, a third from the transportation agencies, and that's through TPB, and a third from our state air agencies. So this upcoming fiscal year, the total budget will see an increase of 2.4%, with each of the main 3 funders contributing $207,000. Now, we do have some carry forward funds. So what we have done in the past is we have been able to use those carry forward funds to hold payment steady at the previous fiscal year's levels. So that's what we are recommending for FY 2027 moving forward into this next fiscal year. Now, I also just wanted to mention in regards to the transportation funding, all that funding is contingent on approval of their UPWP, the Unified Planning Work Program, and we expect that will happen at the end of June. We are not anticipating any issues with that, but I just did want to mention that funding is still in process of approval. Okay, so next we're going to take a look at the core work program areas. So we have 6 main core work program areas that are outlined within within the work program, and you'll see them listed here. And we're going to move through and we'll take a look at the expenses first. So we'll delve into some of the numbers, and then we'll go into some of the tasks that are in each of those. So within these 6 work program areas, the first 3 listed, so our emissions inventory, regional control measures, and then our transportation conformity and mobile emissions analysis, that's where a bulk of the technical work is done. And that is approximately 62% of the total budget. Now, we also have our public participation, which includes funding for the Air and Climate Public Advisory Committee. And then also ACPAC makes up 1/3 of the total budget. And then we have our program management, which is 7% of the overall budget. So moving to the next slide, we'll take a look at each of the core work program areas for FY 2027 and how they compare to the approved budget for FY 2026. So you can see the overall changes within each of the core work program areas. Again, you'll see that each of them has increased a small amount because we do have an overall increase in the total work program of 2.4%. So moving on to the next few slides includes a breakdown essentially of each of the core work program areas and some of the tasks that are included within them. So I'm going to go over these pretty quickly. This is not every single task. There's obviously much more detail within the documentation itself and many more deliverables as well within the documentation. So again, these first 2 here, emissions inventory and regional control measures, the main thing I wanted to mention here is, of course, as I already stated, is that doing the work to finalize the maintenance plan and redesignation requests for the ozone standard is in all of these core work program areas. So you can see that these are really listed under some of the tasks are listed within the first bullet for each of them. So that again is really going to be the main work that we'll be doing. But in addition, I wanted to mention that we also, of course, have support for assisting all of our local members, assisting them in identifying or implementing or developing any types of policies or projects specifically related to improving air quality in their communities. Another task that we do is track all of the federal regulations and report all those back to MWAC and the Technical Advisory Committee, and we comment on those as appropriate. And then also working with all of our other committees as well. Specifically, obviously, we want to make sure everybody's on board with improving air quality in the region. So moving to the next slide lists the tasks within the transportation conformity and mobile emissions core work program area. And again, the focus in here as well is finalizing everything and finalizing all of the mobile emissions for the redesignation request and maintenance plan, but also within here as well is supporting any types of analyses that DTP is doing. So that is something that we do on an ongoing basis. And then also providing any types of briefings to TPB as well. Moving to the next slide and taking a look at the last 3 core work program areas, we have public participation. I mentioned that this includes the support for the Air and Climate Public Advisory Committee, but also that what falls in here as well is, again, doing any of that outreach specifically to our leadership, but also to the public as well, getting out our story that air quality has improved in the region. And we do this through a number of different ways. We'll do news releases, we'll pitch media. We have information that goes out on social media. We have an air quality dashboard that resides on the COG website. That is something that we are going to be redesigning this upcoming year as well. And then I already mentioned developing the trends report. Under MWAC support, just think of this as all of the support for MWAC itself and including all of the other subcommittees that we have. So the executive committee falls under here, TAC, and any other committees. So that all falls under MWAC support. And then lastly, we have program management, and that is everything, all of the basic basically managing the work program, doing all of the finances, the reporting. So all of that falls under program management. So with that, we've gone through the official process of developing the work program. It's gone through review with the budget committee, the technical advisory committee, and now it is here for you all to discuss for final approval.
Thanks, Jen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thanks very much. I think my video is frozen, so I'm trying to work through that, but I wanted to make sure you can hear me okay. Okay, great. First of all, thank you. The huge amount of work gone into this by COG staff and by the different committees and the expertise provided by state and local folks. So thanks very, very much for that work so far. Questions, first of all, on the work program. Can you still hear me okay, Jen?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. On the work program, are there questions on the work program?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. Secondly, are there questions on the budget? Okay, not seeing or hearing any on that. Would you agree, Jen?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. My only comment is that this lays out an extensive scope of work with a lot of key elements. The questions that I had are all answered in the work plan. I assume there's adequate bandwidth to continue to work on the data center issue. Would you say that's true, Jen?
Yes, that is true, and that is something that we've taken into account within the work program and budget.
Okay. And thank you. And I know that one issue that's coming up that I want to talk a little bit about under other business is the fireworks display for the 250 that's allegedly going to be so large. Is there the bandwidth to document from a science-based standpoint what the effects of that could be?
Neil, I'll let you respond to the fireworks.
Yes, so we are planning to we'll be watching that announcements closely, and we're expecting that this will be the biggest fireworks in the country, and so we'll be keeping an eye on it. Usually, in anticipation of that, we issue at least a code orange or USD, unhealthy for sensitive group people, notification of forecast, and also so the public is aware of what's coming in, and also usually that trickles down actually into the next day. So we try to do 2-day at least USD forecast. But if we see based on our weather forecast and anything that is we
Okay.
expect worse than that, then we'll also issue a code red if needed. But we also issue real-time alerts. So in the evening, late evening, when the effects are there, we will be able to know.
Right. So to the extent that in advance we can let folks know, decision makers know, and the public know the potential impacts on the region, it seems to me that might be helpful. Any other questions or comments about the work plan, work program? Okay, I'm not seeing any, and I was kicked off the video totally. So we're having tech challenges, but as long as people can hear and participate, that's the important thing. All right. Yes. Okay. Jen, I'm not hearing or seeing any comments on either the work program or the budget. So I'll entertain a motion, first of all, to approve the work program.
So moved, Kenny Bodie,
Second.
President Attorney.
Kenny, thank you. And I think Thomas Donoga seconded it.
Yes.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. The work program was unanimously approved. Next item on the agenda is the budget. I'll entertain a motion to approve the budget.
So moved.
Thank you, Sonia. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. I heard Thomas Denoga seconded. Any further discussion on the budget? This is. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Abstentions? That item passes unanimously. Again, thank you, huge thank you to COG staff and to those who have participated in putting this together. And we clearly have work to do over the next year for sure. So I much appreciate everybody's involvement. Next item on the agenda is the air quality planning updates, ozone season and redesignation request, and the plan. I'll turn it over to Sunil. Sunil?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right. So I'm going to be presenting like two items, separate items, and I will be quick given the time. So let's get us started. I will be talking about first the redesignation request and maintenance plan that the region has been working for almost 3 years, and then we'll go right into the ozone season data for this year. Next slide, please. So I'm straight away going into the trend in the ozone exceedances, that because that's the item that kind of most people are interested in. You can see here, this shows the trend in exceedances of the current 2015 ozone standard of 70 parts per billion. You can see compared to the late 90s or early 2000s, when we used to have a lot of exceedances of the standard, which included not only code orange but code red and code purple as well, as you can see in the late 90s, early 2000, and then started to come down. And by 2015 or so, you can see it's like there's a flat line almost. There is a lot of variation, and that comes from the meteorology, which plays a big role in this ozone levels production. So, but now we are down. If you look at the last 2-3 years, 2023 was kind of an exception, because there was a lot of wildfires coming from out of the country, from Canada and elsewhere. So we had 15, but that was kind of abnormal. Again, back in 24, 25. They started to come down 7 and 5. That's kind of we see usually happening with the local emission or ozone transport within the country coming from somewhere else. So this year, you can see the slide was done a few days ago, so we didn't have an accidents. For this year, actually, day before yesterday, we saw the first accidents in this area. So yesterday also we came pretty close to 70 parts per billion. One of the monitors went up to 70 parts per billion, but it didn't exceed. So luckily, so basically we have one accident in this season so far. That's pretty good. We'll be keeping an eye on this as we progress into the ozone season, which typically ends until lasts until September end. Next slide, please.
So, Sunil, Dave Snyder, very quickly. So I want to make sure I heard you correctly. The last 2 days of plus 90-degree temperature, how did we do?
Yeah, so we have 95 plus degrees, the highest on our basis. And so that was the reason, we saw first accidents on Monday. And then second, yesterday, actually, it came pretty close to 70 parts per billion. One of the monitors in the Prince George County monitor in Equestrian Center there, it has stopped at 30 ppb, because by the time, late afternoon, the clouds came in, and that kind of saved the day for us. So we have just one accident so far.
One exceedance out of the 2 days of plus 90-degree temperature. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Okay, well, and we're just at the beginning of the season, so we've got a challenge here. Hopefully we'll meet it. Okay, go ahead, Sunil. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Well, a good thing is the next few days, at least like 7-10 days, there will be a lot of clouds and rain, so it's going to be expected. Most of the days will be green. But as I said, ozone season is wide open now. We'll be keeping an eye on the ozone and fine particle levels as well. So this slide shows the trends in the ozone design value. It's a design value is if you don't know, is a parameter that EPA uses to evaluate an area's attainment status, and is based on 3 consecutive year worth of air quality data. So looking at the trend in the ozone design value, again, you can see we used to see 100 plus ppb of design value in late 90s, early 2000. Now we're down to, just last data point was 23, 25, which is still draft. But 69 ppb was based on the last year's data. A year before, also in 2024, we had the same data, number of 69. I just wanted to say that this actual design value was high, but because EPA was able to grant exceptional event waivers due to the wildfire, so that was one of the reasons that the design value came down below 70 parts per billion. But important thing is that now we are officially into maintenance. Not maintenance. EPA has officially given us a clean data determination and another process called determination of attainment by the attainment deadline. So we attained the standard, and as a result, we have started working on the maintenance, a request to redesignate the area to attainment or maintenance. And as part of that, we also have to submit a maintenance plan. I will be talking about that in the second part of this presentation. But for now, it will be, the takeaway is that we are below the standard, and we are moving on to the, developing plans for getting the area to officially designated as attainment or maintenance. Next slide. Okay, so moving on to the PM 2.5 accidents trend, as you can see, this is much better than ozone. Actually, you can see there are quite a few years we didn't see any accidents, and actually that's become a regular feature, except on July 4th. So whenever you see after 2012, you don't see any accidents or occasional 1 or 2 incidences. That's usually happens only on the July 4th. Either code orange or code red, and depending on the meteorology, it can move from code orange to code red level quickly. Again, see 2023 was kind of an exception due to the wildfire, so you can clearly see the effect. But again, then there was no accidents in 24. Then 25 we had just 1, 2, and then there is, so far we haven't seen any accidents this year. That's good. So this story is even better than ozone. Next slide, please. So I'm moving into this second part of this presentation, which is we'll talk about the redesignation request and maintenance plan we are working for currently for the 2015 ozone NACs. So as you all saw in the ozone design value trend slide, we are right now at 69 ppb, and been quite a few years since we have been below the standard or at the standard, so which indicates attainment. But just because the air quality data shows attainment or compliance with the standard doesn't mean that we get officially automatically get designated back into attainment or maintenance standard. There is a process we have to follow, which is that we have to submit a formal request to EPA to redesignate the area to attainment or maintenance, and we also have to submit a maintenance plan that will show that we will keep complying with the standard in the future. So, we are currently working on developing these 2 documents for the 2015 standard. This will, once we submit the request, these 2 documents, and EPA approves them, we will be then officially redesignated into attainment and maintenance plan. Next slide, please. So briefly, here are the components of the 2 plans. The first, there has to be an emission inventory for all anthropogenic or man-made sources. That includes point sources. There is a concept called quasi point sources, basically, which are these are airports emissions, and those are so large that the EPA kind of considers them as point sources, but they are not quite point sources, and they are in non-point. So we call them give them a new name. We call quasi point sources, and that includes Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland, Dulles and Nassau airports in Virginia. And then we have non-point sources. These sources used to be previously called area sources, but now EPA calls them non-point sources. So these are like tiny, small sources scattered over the region, and together, all of them, and together they constitute an important source, significant source of emission. Individually, they may not be, but yeah, collectively they are. And then you have marine sources, some marine vessels, airports, remaining ones, and then you have railroads, And then we have EP has a non-road model, which kind of gives us emissions for a lot of non-road vehicles and engines, equipments. So they are produced separately from the marine, airport, and railroad sources. And then we have on-road sources or motor vehicle sources. So again, these are cars, motorcycles, trucks, and things like that. Point sources, they can say these were the big industries, easy use, electric generating units, and things like that. So we are developing a mission inventory for 4 milestone years. So his base year is 2017. If you, some of you may know that we were initially designated as a modular non-attainment area for this standard. And as part of that, we are required to submit a base year 2017 plan. So that, we already have that complete. We had to revise the on-road and non-road portion of that, because the models have changed since those base year 2017 when inventory was submitted to EPA. So we had to revise that to have an apple-to-apple comparison with the attainment year 2022 inventory. 2022 is one of the year when it was used in design value calculations, and that was the deciding factor for attainment EPA we call clean data determination. So the EPA used one of the years. So that's 2022 is one of the years. So that's attainment year 2022. Then we have an interim year 2032, which is 10 years from the attainment year. And then finally, we have a maintenance year, which is in 2038. So, so we have to develop these emissions for these 4 years, and the inventories are pretty much complete. There are also discussion on the motor vehicle emission budgets. So I will, the MWAQC worked on that. State and duties also had their discussions. And so I will talk about it in the next slide. For now, I will talk about the contingency measures. So these emission controls, these we need to have these measures in the maintenance plan. In case if we ever go back into non-attainment, then these measures need to be implemented pretty quickly. Next slide. So, just kind of elaborating on the status of inventories, the point sources, they are complete. Color point, non-point mark, kind of, they were partially complete. Most of them have now been completed. So this was kind of prepared a few days ago, this slide. So now all those things have been complete. Non-road, all more sources have been ready. As far as the documentation is concerned, yeah, those, we are working on the documentation part here. Most of that seems to be complete, but yeah, but the Kazai point, non-point mark, those sources are taking some time. There are numerous of those sources there, so we just want to make sure that everything is included. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to show some emission trends here. So we included the emission trends for 2022, 32, and 38. For this is the left side is for NOx emissions in tons per day. These are ozone season day average emissions. I can see here there is a clear cut, downward trend between these 3 years, and that's what we wanted. And the VOC emissions, you can see a sharp drop in 32 from 2022, and then this very slight increase in 2038. That's like less than half a ton. And so overall, it indicates that the EPA requirement is that basically, or EPA expect that the interim and future year, which is 2032 and 2038 emissions, should be below the 2022, that is the attainment year. So we meet that criteria. So that's good. Next slide, please. So this is kind of busy slide. So this will be this slide shows the total emissions and from different sources in bar chart format. You can see the point sources for VOC, and this is for VOC, are pretty small, and then you have the non-point sources are the majority of the emissions, VOC emissions, and then you have a non-road emission and then followed by on-road emissions. So it gives you some idea of the level of contribution of emissions from these different sources. okay, so and then you're seeing a solid green line, on top of these bars, and then you have a number also in green line. This was the total emissions, and then of course you have the emissions breakdown by different sources in the different sections of the bar chart, bars. And as you can see here, the green line is the maintenance line. Basically, the emissions cannot go above that line with motor vehicle emission budget included. So we had the discussion with the states and air agencies and transportation agency. We also discussed in the MWAQC meeting last, so the agreement is that we should have 20% safety margin, and if so, and the reason for safety margins, and we have done this always in the past SIPs, is that there is a pretty good chance actually that EPA may come up with another MOVES model, which is for on-road and on-road sources in next few months. We don't know the exact timing of that, but it is expected. So we don't know. There will be some changes to the rules that have been now been taken out from the area. So from the motor vehicle sources. So they may affect the emissions levels. So in order to kind of give a buffer, the safety margin is also called transportation buffer. So we wanted to give some buffer so we don't end up revising this maintenance plan again because we don't want a situation where it's the non-road on the with total emission with on-road exceeds the maintenance level. So we wanted to give some buffer. So the decision was to give 20% safety margin. So in 2032 and 2038, so numbers are here: 25.7 tons per day and 21.4 tons per day. And that leaves in 2032, if you look at the top, just below the green line, it says remaining safety margin is 1.07 tons per day. So we have a little bit of cushion left, even after the safety margin, 20% safety margin applied to the on-road sectors. And same thing in 1.14 tons per day in the safety margin is left in 2038. So it's a small, but this does allow us some cushion in case if the new model shows some emission changes. So that's it for VOC. Next slide, please. We are in much better situation in NOx tons per day. Is this again? You can see here we have a pretty good margin actually in 2032, which is 24 tons per day roughly, and then it increases to 31.75 tons per day in 2038 with a 40% safety margin. The TAC committee actually discussed both 20% and 40%, and based in our previous experience. Is the NOx actually in the it gets revised more significantly than VOC in the MOVES model. So, and this is the pollutant which kind of matters more for our non-attainment purposes than VOC. So, and luckily we have the big safety kind of big gap here between the total emissions, which is 139.44, as opposed to the baseline emission, maintenance line emission of 172.9 tons per day. So the committee decided to give 40% safety margin for NOx in both years, and that included numbers come out to be 33 tons per day in 2032 and 22.2 tons per day in 2038. So even with this, the safety margin, you can see the remaining safety margins are pretty good, 24 tons and 32 tons per day.
Thanks.
So that will help us in case if model gets updated or if any of the changes, if any of the input data that goes into the travel demand model or those kind of changes. So this is for motor vehicle emission budgets. Next slide, please.
Could you wrap up in 2 minutes, Sunil? I know this is important.
Okay,
So-
I know, yeah. So this will be, we have to apply contingency measures. So here are the measures. I'm not going to go into details, but this have been discussed and we'll go into the maintenance plan. Next slide, please. So the next slide is that the next step will be that we have to submit this document by the end of 2026. And then as we are talking, we'll be fixing this document and then we'll sending it to EPA's initial review and for public comment sometimes in June, July timeframe. We'll be planning to present that a special meeting of MWAC in July for approving this for public hearing and comment processes, and then we'll so that the plan could be finalized and approved by MWAC in December 2nd meeting, and so that the states could send the document soon after that. Remember, we have to send this document by the year end, so that's an important thing. Next slide. Yeah, that's all I had. Any questions?
Sunil, thank you very much. There's an awful lot in this presentation. And Jen, I suggest that we move forward to considering the July meeting and thinking about dates that work. This is beyond the approval of our work for the year. This is probably the number one item for this year. So it may need additional time. So let's talk about the potential of a July meeting and work out some potential dates with folks. Are there any questions or comments for Sunil? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Jen, are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay. So thank you all very much. Sunil, thank you for your work on this. And there's a good story here, but remain challenged. And that's probably a lot of our work for the rest of the year. So thanks for that. Next item, we really want to commence our discussion of the air pollution impacts from data centers. You were asked specifically during a Council of Governments board meeting to address this issue, and it was assigned to us. And now we have the opportunity to spend some time on this. I want to invite our guest speaker, Dr. Pitt and Dr. Is it Suen? Or probably have mispronounced that. I apologize.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. Well, in which case I won't try again. I'll leave it there. Thanks so much for being on. And you're at the VCU School of Government and Public Affairs. My daughter graduated from one of the programs at VCU, not this one, but we're very honored to have you, impressed with what you can bring. And these two presentations today are sort of kicking off and laying some foundation again for our work on data centers and air pollution. So with that, I'll turn it over to our guests and any quick introduction they want to do and take us through your slides. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll get started. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
So I'm Damian Pitt, along with my colleague Ivan. We're both associate professors of urban and regional studies and planning in the School of Government and Public Affairs. I'm also the associate director for the VCU Institute for Sustainable Energy and Environment, which is the logo you see on the bottom right there. Next slide. And just wanted to mention that this, what we're presenting now is a internally funded project with a very small budget. So far we've taken a very kind of narrow slice of this issue to explore as part of a broader effort that the Institute is taking on to look at data issues and environmental impacts of data and data centers from a number of different angles. What we're doing here is looking at the current reported air pollution emissions from data centers in Northern Virginia, as well as the potential emissions based on their permits in order to hope to inform local planning and permitting decisions and position ourselves as leaders on this issue. And to just kind of jump to the key results, which Ivan will expand upon later, what we found is that areas near clusters of data centers in Northern Virginia, particularly the famous data center alley, as well as another cluster in Prince William County, we're already seeing what we would consider to be significant emissions exposure. particularly for NOx, just from the reported emissions of actual data center operations using these backup generators for backup, generation and for testing purposes. But that, were they to be used more often for other purposes and reach emissions level closer to what's allowed under their permits, that would really be far greater levels of exposure that would be obviously even more concerning. And then what we did was looked at how the exposure to concentrations of emissions from these data center operations correlate to various socioeconomic characteristics, and found that there is a correlation that higher exposure to pollution from data centers, air pollution from data centers, correlates to lower incomes, lower educational attainment, and lower home ownership percentages relative to other census areas in these counties that are experiencing lower levels of data center pollution. Next. We can probably skip this slide, and I'm thinking you guys are all familiar with the fact that Northern Virginia is the data center capital of the world, and there's various environmental concerns and associated policy debates around that. So we can move on. Could probably skip this one as well. Just to frame it, we understand that the growth of data centers is increasing electricity demand, right? Projected to triple from the year 2020 to 2050, I believe, according to the JLARC study, and that brings concerns about is this going to result in new fossil fuel power plants being built, and the air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions associated with those new power plants that might be built to serve data center demand. But what we're looking at is specifically the use of these backup generators, primarily diesel and in some cases natural gas, and the direct air pollution impacts they have on nearby communities. And I'll also mention here, as part of the setup, that part of what we're doing is, as Ivan will explain, is comparing the emissions exposure from data centers to that from other facilities in the Northern Virginia region that are a little bit more visible and well understood as sources of air pollution, in order to really contextualize both the current reported emissions as well as the potential emissions from those permits. Next. So what we have is reported data from Virginia DEQ going back to 2015. We actually now have the 2015 through 2024, but this slide is just showing through 2023. And what we're seeing is that with the increase of total data centers in the region, that the amount of emissions from those facilities is increasing, as you see in the figures on the bottom of this slide. Next. So what we're doing is looking at the data centers in the Northern Virginia region that have DEQ air permits. And as of March 2026, there's 173 data centers with data center air permits in the entire state. 141 of those are in our study area, which is kind of a more narrow version of Northern Virginia. So Fairfax, Loudoun, Prince William counties, the associated independent cities within or adjacent to those counties. In theory, our study area includes Alexandria and Arlington as well, but there's no data centers with air permits in those counties and in those localities. And just to clarify, as this audience probably understands this, but you'll see numbers reported for the number of data centers in Virginia that is much higher than the 173 that we're reporting here. That's due to two factors. One, there's kind of a broader definition of data centers that sometimes is used that includes facilities that don't have backup generators and don't require air permits. And then furthermore, some of the air permits are for locations that have what some might consider multiple data centers that and sometimes are counted separately, but are all under the same air permit in the same general location. So we have the reported emissions that DEQ that are provided to DEQ, and that DEQ then passes on to DPA. We've obtained that data as well as the information from the air permits, and again, our analysis is based on the 138 air permits that were available to download as of like a year ago when we first started this process. So as I'm going to explain later, we looked at estimated dispersion of emissions within a 1 mile radius and how that translates to census block group level concentrations. And then, as I mentioned a minute ago, compare those to the types of exposure one would get from living near other facilities in the region, natural gas power plants, compressor stations, landfills, things, other types of municipal facilities, and so on. And again, analyze the correlations to socioeconomic factors, sorry. So one thing that I think is really eye-catching from these results is just the total scale of the data center backup generators. So just among those 138 permitted facilities as of a year ago, there's a total of 7,338 individual generators. The combined power capacity of those, as you see, is over 18,000 megawatts or 18.45 gigawatts. And what's shocking here is that that's roughly equal, actually slightly higher than the total power generation capacity for all Dominion Energy owned and operated power stations in Virginia. So, Dominion has there's other power stations that aren't Dominion. There are other, Dominion imports power and such, but in terms of actual Dominion owned power stations, nuclear, natural gas, solar, et cetera, the total power capacity of all of those facilities in the entire state is less than the total power capacity of the 7,338 diesel generators in the Northern Virginia data center area. Yeah, next slide. Yeah. So this is the result here of looking at the total emissions for coming from these data center facilities compared to other notable facilities. And we don't need to get into all the details here. It's kind of complicated, but long story short is that those quote actual, we should really say reported emissions there for 2023. We see, for example, more carbon monoxide coming from the data centers in totality than comes from the Dominion Possum Point Power Station, substantially more nitrous oxides as well, less particulate matter, but still more particulate matter, substantially more emissions than you would get, for example, from an individual compressor station, and similar, sometimes more, sometimes less than from the landfills, wastewater treatment plants, et cetera. Click again because there's some more information on this slide, and I'm sorry this is a little poorly formatted here, but if you make out the bold text there, the total permitted emissions from the data centers is just leaps and bounds beyond what you're seeing from the Prince William County landfill, these power stations, et cetera. Just far more emissions than involved with any of these other notable facilities that we've identified. And the other thing that's on this slide that is a little messy is the updated 2024 reported emissions. What's unique and kind of complicated about that is when we go to 2024, we're now including the Vantage 2 facility, which is reporting its total emissions, including, as I'm sure you guys are aware, the fact that they use natural gas for their primary power source. And so it's the primary power as well as the backup generators that are combined in the Vantage 2 emissions reporting. So that skews the data a little bit. In any case, we'll move on. When we're talking about the natural gas power plants, we're comparing to the two natural gas power plants in our study area, the Possum Point facility and one other one that's name is escaping me at the moment. They'll be on this next slide, on this next chart, if you click. The Panda Stonewall facility, which also operates under another name currently. In any case, the point here is that these are, what we're comparing to is two facilities in our study area that you might call like medium scale natural gas power plants. There are other natural gas power plants in Virginia with much higher levels of emissions than the one we're comparing to. And there are also some with actually like lower levels of emissions. So I just wanted to clarify that. Okay. Next. Go on. Yeah. We also looked into this kind of ratio of actual versus permitted emissions because the conventional some studies have come out that have focused only on the permitted emissions because those researchers did not have access to the data that we have on actual reported emissions. And the pushback is, well, permitted emissions don't mean anything because actual emissions are only 5% of that total. We find that it's actually more like 6 to 10% of the total in this case, right? So the actual reported emissions are about, as you'll see on the next chart here. Click, please. Yeah, so looking at the aggregate total reported tons of emissions versus the permitted totals, we see it's about 6% of permitted total for carbon monoxide and up to 10% for particulate matter. Aggregate across all the facilities, but if you click again, you'll see that the, click again, please. Yes. In the cases of some individual data centers, we're seeing much higher percentages of their permitted emissions that are actually being emitted according to the reporting. So, the point is that industry standard conventional wisdom of 5% is a little bit underselling the total across all facilities, and in some cases, at some facilities, the reported emissions are far higher as a percentage of the permitted emissions. Next. Okay, I'll let Ivan take over here to talk about our processes and findings in more detail.
Okay, thank you, Damien. Good morning, everyone, and I'm assuming that you guys can hear me okay. My name is Ivan Suen, and Associate Professor at VCU, and I will be presenting the methodology behind the numbers we derived. And this is probably the only slide I will be spending most of the time with you guys, because what you are about to see in the following slides are the modeled results. And so that's why I think it is our responsibility to clearly state what are the model parameters that we used to generate those numbers, because if we change the parameters, the model result will be different. Even though the big picture is probably going to be the same, but it is very important to go over these parameters. So just bear with me to go over these details. And so number one is about the resolution. And the resolution idea behind this is that we subdivide the study area into small, tiny grid cells so that each of the grid cell can receive a pollutant measure of the model. So the size of the grid cell is 330 by 330 feet, and that's roughly about 100 meter by 100 meter in size. And after that, we locate each of the data centers, and then we run the model, which is based upon the Gaussian kernel illustration model, which is basically a mathematical model that would actually determine the amount of pollutions in space. And so that's basically what that is. And so the bandwidth is another important parameter I want to talk about. The bandwidth is actually the distance that we allow the pollutant to travel and from the data center. And so if we change that bandwidth, and then the result will be different. So now you can imagine if we run the model on each of the data center, then each one of the data center will have its own plume in a way. So depending on the amount of pollution, and they will have different shape and different size as well. But we merged all of these together based upon pollutants. And then so on the right, this is one of the example of the merged result. And then from there, we'll be able to move on to allocate the pollutions to the census block group level. Next slide, please. Can we move on to yeah. So the next slide is basically we're transforming the raster or the grid cell based model result to census block group. The reason we want to do that is because we want to correlate the pollutions along with demographic, socioeconomic factors like income and so forth. Those are reported at the census geography, and we're using the census block group. So the grid cells and the block groups, they don't really talk to one another, so we need to reallocate the grid cells or aggregate them to the individual block group and then compute the block group level concentration of each of the pollutants. So this slide is basically showing you the NOx example, but we use the same approach to model the other pollutants as well. So now we can move on to the next slide, please. So what you're going to see from this slide and the next two is basically side-by-side comparison about the reported emissions. So the one on the left are the reported emissions from data centers, and then the one on the right are the reported emissions from non-data centers like power stations, solid waste treatment, and so forth. So so the reason we want to put them side by side is to see how comparable, or we can compare the pollutions from different or data centers versus non-data center facilities. So this one is the carbon monoxide comparison between the two. So the key takeaway here is basically you're looking at the reported emissions and from DEQ and from NEI. So next slide, please. The next one is NOx, and we can go through, we can move on to the next one as well, and we can go through these quickly. So next slide, please. And the next one is the PM 2.5. I'm sorry, going back up one more, please. Yeah, the next one is the PM 2.5. So we model the CO, the NOx, the PM 2.5, put them side-by-side comparison between data centers reported emission versus the non-data center reported emission. And then next slide, please. Okay, the next one is actually much severe in a way because we're actually modeling the permitted emission. And of course, we already know the permitted emission level is much higher than the reported one. So, so this is the result that we derive from the permitted emissions. So the one on the left is the carbon monoxide. The one on the right is the NOx. And next slide, please. And next one is the PM 2.5. And I think Damien already addressed some of the key findings there. So I'm just for the sake of time, I'll just move on to the next slide to briefly talk about the pollutions versus the, can you do a click, please, so we can see the table? Yeah, thank you. So basically, the tables below the text are the correlation coefficients result. I'm not going to bore you guys with these numbers, but the key takeaway here is basically we run the correlation analysis between the pollution concentration and a number of socioeconomic variables. And what we found is that higher pollution generally are related to lower socioeconomic status. So this is apparently most significant when it comes to income. So higher pollution associated with lower income, and higher pollution associated with lower educational level, and higher pollution associated with lower home ownership. And but now it's raised, and statistically speaking, even though higher pollution is associated with a higher non-white percentage, but it is not statistically significant. Okay, I think I'm going to stop here. I'll let Damien to wrap up the presentation here. I think we have one more slide to go. Click on next, please. And Damien, you can take over.
Sure. Yeah, this is just to reiterate somewhat I said earlier that the reason why we think that, we think what we find shows that the localized air pollution impacts are already significant based on what's being reported in 2023, 2024. But those permitted emission totals are also relevant when you think about the fact that there's been proposals at both the state and federal level within the past year to try to use those quote unquote backup generators more often to provide power to the grid in times of high demand. So that would result in higher emissions trending towards what we showed for the permitted emissions totals. And so we hope that this informs policy decisions around data center siting, as well as potentially policies around the, calling for or incentivizing the use of the more advanced tier 4 generators that would be less polluting. And there's various types of future research directions that we'd like to take this, in the future. That's all.
Well,
So thank you for your time, and it's been we're happy to have presented this to you guys, and feel ready to field questions if you have any.
thanks a lot. There's really a lot here. Each slide we could spend, quite a bit of time on. Thank you. Thank you for your work. I think in many ways it's really groundbreaking. Are there any questions or comments from anyone? Jen, I'm not hearing or seeing any. Are you?
I do not see any hands up.
Okay. Well, I want to thank our guests again. This is not the last time that we deal with this issue. And could I ask you, would you entertain coming back again if we would benefit from that?
Yeah, certainly. If we have anything new to offer, we've got several irons in the fire now for potential ways of expanding the work. And should any of that come to pass, we'll definitely share that with you all, and we'd be happy to present the next phase.
Okay. Thanks very much. One last time, any questions for our guests? Okay, not seeing any. I want to thank you so much for your work. There's a lot to think about here, and it's much appreciated.
Pleasure.
Thanks. Take care. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Thank you. Next item, and again, I apologize. For some reason, the technology is not allowing me to be on video, so I'm actually improving the quality of this meeting by not being on video. So, in any event, let's see. The next item on the agenda is Virginia DEQ Data Center Monitoring Project. And I want to thank DEQ for their work here. They're coming forward here with this study, and this is some additional very useful information. I'd like to turn it over to Chuck Turner, Virginia DEQ's Air Quality Monitoring Manager, on their special report. Chuck, are you on?
I am. Can you hear me?
Thanks. Welcome. Thanks so much. And please take it from here.
Okay, no problem. I'm going to try to share my screen here, which is always potentially problematic, but let's give it a shot. All right, everyone should see my screen now. Is that working?
Yep, I can. Thank you so much.
All right,
First
so let's go
challenge
ahead.
met.
All right, let me get the display settings straight here. All right, so I'm going to have actually a short PowerPoint, and then we're going to go through the web page. But to get everybody sort of up to speed on what we're doing with this project. So basically, we started this project in February of this year. Basically, there are two phases to the project. It involves sensors and it involves monitoring, two different concepts I'll get into later, but it's targeted Loudoun County and Prince William County. So we're going to begin with an intensive air quality sensor study, and then follow that up with what are called federal reference method, federal equivalent method monitoring methods. That is, using equipment that generates data of EPA level quality. So we have it pretty well laid out on the web page. I was hoping by this time we would have the interactive part up and running. That is, the ability for people to go in and actually look at the data coming from the sensors. Unfortunately, we have not gotten that up online yet, but we're working on that hopefully by the end of the week, if not early next week. And that'll allow people to actually go in and see the data coming from each one of the sensors that we have laid out. So I want to move over to the web page, and everyone should be looking at the web page right now. All right, so this you can go onto the DEQ web page. It comes up, and you can either go through the air and energy selection, or it rotates through and you can select it directly off the main main page for the web page. But anyway, this talks about the data center air monitoring project. Again, we started in early February, just going out and finding locations. We've actually been monitoring since using sensors since mid-March. So let's talk about a little bit about the design. So we have a phase 1 deployment, which is sensors, and sensors are less expensive, more portable, and very useful air quality measurement techniques. They just don't generate data that would be of the quality we would use to compare against the NACs, but they're very indicative of trends, and it does help us then identify areas within, in this case, Loudoun County, that may need a follow-up in terms of additional monitoring information that does generate the EPA level quality. So we're starting in Loudoun County. We're planning on moving to Prince William County. So we don't have the sites for Prince William County loaded on the webpage yet, but we've selected several sites in Prince William County to go and follow up with the sensor study in phase 2 as well. Then phase 3 will be we're actually putting together a portable air quality monitoring trailer that we'll be able to go out and follow up on those sites that we found with the sensors that indicate maybe we need to get more accurate and more EPA quality data generated from those sites to determine in the future if maybe we need to put a permit monitoring site in that location. Same thing with Prince William. Once we're done with the sensor component of this, we'll then follow up with a monitoring level study there as well. We're hoping to get this done within the year. And the web page hasn't helped us there, but we're working on it. So anyway, so what are we measuring? PM 2.5, carbon monoxide, and nitrogen dioxide. Each one of the sensors that we put out has a separate sensor for measuring each one of those pollutants. And again, I just want to remind you, those sensors are generating data, but not of the quality we would normally use to compare against the NAC standard. So this is where we take a look at what we have selected here. So this is the area of Loudoun County where we're focused. These are, well, let's do this. And so each one of these blue spots is a permitted data center, and these are where we currently have our sensors. All right, I want to point out one thing. We're always going to have a sensor here. This is in Loudoun County. That is actually our air quality monitoring site located in Loudoun County. We always want to compare that just to ensure that we're getting quality data from the sensors. So, and then, as I said, we're Prince William, we're working on, that's the area. We just haven't put in the actual sensor locations yet. So we're working on that as well. All right, sensor data. This is sort of a, this will help you read the report kind of introduction to what's there. And basically this just shows you the plotted information of what we're getting. Each one of these represents a different location within Loudoun County that we're measuring. We've got one at the golf course. I think it's 1757. And then we just moved one to this Belfort Park Drive. So that doesn't have a whole lot of data in it yet. But then we've got one at our monitoring site at Broad Run High School, one at Dulles Airport, right? And we're looking at PM 2.5 right now. So this line represents the standard. In this case, the 24-hour standard, or 35 micrograms per cubic meter. And this just shows you what kind of data we're receiving and how it varies through the day. This, again, we're reporting hourly information here. So while the 24-hour data will be measured against the 35 micrograms, we thought it important to show how the hourly data is fluctuating relative to that 24-hour standard. And again, NO2 and carbon monoxide all are covered in our report. So what we're doing now, until we get that interactive component taken care of, is we're posting what are called our data analysis or air quality analysis reports. And you can go in there and it's reasonably intricate, but it does support the information that we saw in the simplified sensor data selection, but that tells you a little bit more about our methodology and some of the statistics in terms of making comparisons. This information right here is what the sensors are that we're using. If you look below here, each one of these sensor bodies has portable sensor measurement technology. So, you'll see in ours, these three will have, we also have VOCs, by the way, that we're measuring. We're just not reporting those because there's no NAAQS standard, but basically carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide, and PM 2.5. I also want to bring in, if you have any questions about this, please feel free to submit them. Our comms folks are going to put together frequently asked questions after we get enough of them and post that so people can go through and get a little bit more information about what we're trying to accomplish here. In my presentation, I just wanted to sort of remind folks what we have in terms of our, this is our network that's already out there. These are EPA quality monitors that we have placed around Northern Virginia. This would be the Broad Run site that's in Loudoun County. This right here is Long Park, which is in Prince William, which will be part of our study when we get to Prince William as well. And just as a reminder, these are the pollutants that we're measuring at the permanent monitoring sites in our Northern Virginia component of our network. And a little close to the end here, but I think what I'll do is go ahead and leave it open for questions. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and throw it open if anybody has any questions.
Thanks a lot, Chuck. Clearly an interesting initiative. Are there any findings that you can summarize or that you want to share with us at this point so far, or are we just sort of at the early stage?
Well, I would say what we're seeing right now is we do not seem to see any issues relative to the NAAQS standards. Okay. That doesn't mean that an individual hourly reading, say for PM 2.5, doesn't spike. And we have seen that, but that could be from any sort of local impacts like an idling vehicle or something like that. We actually use these sensors in a study out in Western Virginia, and one of our sensors did spike, and it turned out there was a delivery vehicle that left its motor running for a couple hours while it was delivering. So don't get too tied up in the individual spikes. We also plot the 24-hour numbers against the 24-hour standard and PM 2.5. Basically, what we're seeing is it does not seem to be impacting the NAAQS standards from what we've gotten so far.
Okay. And how do you measure sort of the additive impacts, whatever they are, major or minor, to Northern Virginia generally and the region? That is, without the data centers, where would we be? With the data centers, here's where we are from a standpoint of Northern Virginia and DC region.
Well, probably the best way to do that is to look at our historical data from our monitoring sites and then compare that with any add-on or any additional concentration of pollutants that we see after the large influx of impacts or large influx of emissions from the data centers. We haven't actually done that study yet. That doesn't mean it won't be done as part of this study. Right now, we're just sort of focused on the sensors and getting that data and determining what that's telling us.
And what's the timetable for your study? Actually, the question that I asked might be one that hopefully you could consider. But what is the actual timetable for the study?
Well, we wanted to get it done within a year, but I'm going to let the data kind of drive us there. If we start seeing, interesting impacts in the data, we will extend it to the point where we can investigate those. And I'd like to also point out that we did a sort of a short-term study in Prince William already. We knew of a situation where one of the data centers was going to operate using the backup generation capacity. And while it didn't impact the NAAQS, we do feel like we saw impacts from that study. So that's something that we're going to factor into determining how long the study goes. If we get the opportunity, for example, for another situation like that, where we know there's a situation where they're going to be using backup generation, we will likely see about getting our sensors moved into place so we can get some sort of measurement or understanding of the impact from those backup generators.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for the report. Any questions or comments? Okay, Jen,
Hey,
I'm
Dave,
not seeing.
I have
Go
my
ahead,
hand
Jen.
up, but I don't know if you can see it. This is Kristen Weaver from Greenbelt.
Yeah, please, Kristen, go ahead.
I think this hopefully will be a quick one because I see we're a little over time. But in
Sure.
addition to installing your own sensors, are you looking to incorporate any other existing small sensor networks, or is it primarily going to be just the new sensors you're installing?
Well, the advantage of the sensors that we've installed is the ability to measure more than one pollutant. I mean, there are purple air sensors, for example, out there. Again, that's only PM 2.5, and we hadn't really considered looking at that. Obviously, we're not going to randomly eliminate any additional possible source of data. But for right now, the focus of the study is using our data from our sensors because of the location, co-location of the different pollutants, that type of consideration.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks. Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, on these two last agenda items, I think we've laid an excellent foundation. We're going to keep probing what's out there and assemble it, make it as available as we possibly can to the public and to other decision makers. So I'll turn it back to Jen. Jen, do you have anything else you want to go over today?
No, there's nothing else for today's meeting.
Okay, and just one sort of additional item that I wanted to mention. I mentioned earlier, there's some interest in look at the potential impacts of the proposed 250 anniversary fireworks if it exceeds what we've seen in the past, because we do have a documented history with the fireworks, the large-scale fireworks on 4th of July. So we'll be taking a look at that, and to the extent we can make any analysis or discussion available, we'll certainly do that. And with that, I'll entertain any other questions or comments from members of MWAC. Jen, I'm not seeing or hearing any, are you?
I am not seeing any either.
Okay, well, once again, thanks everyone, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Thomas. Is there a second? I know we want to adjourn, so we need a second.
I'll
Thank
second.
you. I got it. Thank you so very much. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Thanks, everyone. Have a safe holiday, and thanks for your work on behalf of the public. Have a good day.